In this video, we explore 5 bizarre safari attacks captured on camera. From a wildlife photographer who got too close to a dangerous elephant, to a conservation volunteer who crossed an invisible line with a protective rhino. Let's begin with the first story, where one photographer's pursuit of the perfect shot put him face to face with death. It was June 14th, 2015, and the afternoon sun hung heavy over Chobe National Park in Botswana, turning the landscape into a shimmering expanse of golden grass and scattered acacia trees. The remote northern sector stretched for miles, a wilderness where tourist traffic was minimal, and wildlife moved with the confidence of creatures that rarely encountered humans. Temperatures hovered near 95 degrees, and the seasonal waterhole had become a critical gathering point for elephant herds. Marcus Holbrook adjusted his Canon camera lens, his fingers moving with practiced precision. At 42 years old, the Denver-based wildlife photographer had built a respectable reputation, capturing African wildlife. His wife Jennifer sat beside him in the Land Cruiser, reviewing the shots they'd captured that morning. The Holbrooks had arrived in Botswana 5 days earlier, their third trip to Africa in as many years. They were serious photographers who invested in top-tier equipment. Marcus specialized in elephant photography, fascinated by their complex social structures. Their guide was Cabo Motswana, a local who had been guiding tourists for 12 years. He'd developed a sixth sense for reading animal behavior and agreed to take the Holbrooks into the park's remote northern sector, where the elephants were less accustomed to vehicles. In the mid-afternoon, they spotted what Marcus had been hoping for: a herd of approximately 15 elephants gathered around a seasonal waterhole. The group included several young calves, but it was the matriarch that caught Marcus's attention. She was massive, easily identifiable by her broken right tusk. Marcus had his camera out before Cabo even brought the vehicle to a complete stop. He positioned his tripod outside the Land Cruiser's open side door. The park's regulations were clear. Visitors were supposed to remain inside their vehicles at all times, but enforcement in these remote areas was practically non-existent. The elephants appeared completely at ease. Then, just minutes into his recording, everything changed. One of the younger calves wandered away from its mother, moving toward the vehicle. It approached to within 20 feet of where Marcus stood. The matriarch noticed. Her ears flared outward. She raised her trunk high and released a trumpet call that echoed across the waterhole. Every other elephant in the herd froze. African elephants are the largest land animals on Earth, with adult females weighing between 6,000 and 7,000 pounds and standing up to 9 feet tall at the shoulder. But their size isn't what makes them dangerous. It's their intelligence and their fierce protective instincts. Elephant matriarchs will defend their family members with lethal force when necessary. They can run at speeds up to 25 miles per hour, despite their massive size, and a charging elephant generates enough momentum to flip vehicles, crush bones, and kill with a single strike. Cabo called out for Marcus to get inside. The matriarch was going to charge. Marcus hesitated. The matriarch was moving now, walking with heavy, deliberate steps directly toward them. He reached for his tripod, trying to collapse the extended legs, but the locking mechanisms were stiff. Jennifer had already scrambled back into the vehicle. The matriarch broke into a full charge, her ears pinned back, her trunk curled under her body, and her head lowered with her tusks pointing forward. Marcus dropped his tripod and dove toward the Land Cruiser's open door. His hands found the door frame just as Cabo threw the vehicle into reverse. Marcus was half inside, his legs still dangling outside, when the matriarch reached them. Her massive head struck the vehicle's side panel with the force of a wrecking ball. The entire Land Cruiser rocked violently. Marcus's grip on the doorframe was the only thing keeping him from being thrown out. The matriarch rammed again, this time catching the rear quarter panel. The impact left a deeply caved-in panel and shattered the rear window. Safety glass exploded inward. Cabo kept his foot pressed to the floor, but the Land Rover's reverse speed was limited, and the elephant was faster. The matriarch charged alongside the reversing vehicle. She swung her head sideways, and the impact knocked Marcus's grip loose. He fell from the vehicle, hitting the ground hard. Before he could even attempt to stand, the matriarch was on him. Her tusks came down with devastating force, goring through his chest. The massive elephant pressed her weight onto him, crushing his ribcage and vital organs. Marcus's body went still within seconds. Cabo slammed on the brakes. The matriarch stood over Marcus's body, trumpeting aggressively at the vehicle. Jennifer remained inside the Land Cruiser, while Cabo physically blocked her from attempting to exit. Any movement toward the matriarch would likely result in another attack. Cabo radioed for emergency assistance while keeping the vehicle at a safe distance. The matriarch remained standing over Marcus's body for nearly 10 minutes before finally returning to her herd. The other elephants had remained in a defensive formation throughout the entire incident, protecting the calves while their matriarch dealt with the perceived threat. Park rangers arrived within the hour. They confirmed Marcus was dead at the scene. Massive chest trauma and internal injuries incompatible with life. Officials reviewed Marcus's recovered footage. The video clearly showed the Holbrooks operating their cameras outside the vehicle, a direct violation of park regulations. Jennifer was issued a citation but no fine, given the circumstances. The matriarch and her herd showed no unusual behavior afterward. Wildlife officials noted that she had simply done what any protective mother would do. The footage Marcus captured in his final moments was used in park safety training videos as a cautionary tale, but was never released to the public. Park officials determined that out of respect for Jennifer and the Holbrook family, the graphic nature of the attack should remain restricted to professional training contexts only. Yet Marcus's fatal encounter with a protective elephant wasn't the only time someone's camera kept rolling as a safari turned deadly. In Zambia's South Luangwa National Park, a professional guide's helmet camera would capture the moment a leopard's charge became something far more lethal. It was October 8, 2016, and the morning air in South Luangwa National Park carried the crisp coolness that came just before the Zambian heat settled in for the day. The Mopane woodland stretched endlessly in every direction, prime leopard territory where experienced guides knew constant vigilance was required. Daniel Kowalski checked his rifle one final time, running through the safety protocols he'd performed hundreds of times before. At 31 years old, the professional safari guide had spent 7 years leading walking safaris through some of Africa's most dangerous terrain. That morning, Daniel was leading a group of 4 tourists, 2 couples, one from Germany and one from the United States. Werner Schmidt was filming continuously with a handheld camcorder. The group had been walking for over an hour when Daniel spotted fresh leopard tracks pressed into soft sand near a dry riverbed. Leopards were notoriously elusive, and sightings were rare enough to be considered the highlight of any trip. Daniel decided to follow the tracks, hoping to give his clients a glimpse from a safe distance. Werner's footage shows the group moving in single file. After some time, Daniel raised his hand in a stop signal. The camera zooms in, showing a male leopard well ahead, feeding on an impala carcass in tall grass. For a couple of minutes, the leopard fed, apparently unaware. Then it stopped. Its head lifted, ears rotating forward. The leopard's eyes locked onto the group. Daniel instructed the group to back away slowly. The leopard stood, abandoned the carcass, and began walking toward them. Deliberate, purposeful steps. Its body language was tense, ears flat, tail twitching. Leopards are Africa's most adaptable big cats, weighing up to 200 pounds with bite forces strong enough to crush bone. Unlike lions, which sometimes use mock charges as warnings, leopards are more likely to either retreat completely or commit fully to an attack, especially when defending a fresh kill. When a leopard perceives a threat to its food source, its response can escalate to lethal violence in seconds. Within moments, the leopard charged. It broke into a full sprint, covering ground with explosive speed. Daniel fired toward the ground near the leopard, hoping to turn it. The leopard didn't stop. At a fresh kill, the gunshot only reinforced the leopard's perception of threat. At close range, Daniel fired again, aiming to wound. The shot went wide. The leopard launched itself at Daniel in a single leap. Werner's footage becomes chaotic. When the camera steadies, it shows Daniel on the ground with the leopard on top of him. The animal's jaws clamped onto Daniel's left shoulder, its rear claws raking his torso. Robert Chen, one of the tourists, ran forward with a hiking pole and struck the leopard. The animal released Daniel's shoulder momentarily and swiped at Robert. The leopard turned back to Daniel, its jaws clamping down on his throat. The bite was crushing, targeting the windpipe and major blood vessels. Daniel's body went limp beneath it. Werner's camera captures the leopard maintaining its grip for several more seconds before finally releasing him and sprinting back toward its kill. The entire attack lasted less than half a minute. The remaining tourists stood frozen, their training to remain still during wildlife encounters, overridden by what they'd just witnessed. Daniel lay motionless, his throat crushed, blood spreading across the ground. The leopard's bite had destroyed his airway and severed critical vessels. He lost consciousness within moments and died shortly after. Robert Chen, despite his attempt to help, was left with deep lacerations on his forearm from the leopard's defensive swipe, injuries that would require extensive treatment once they reached medical facilities. The tourists used Daniel's emergency beacon to radio for help. A rescue vehicle arrived within half an hour. Paramedics confirmed Daniel was dead at the scene. Authorities investigated using Werner's footage. Their analysis determined Daniel had followed all appropriate protocols, but had unknowingly approached too close to a leopard defending a fresh kill. The park classified it as defensive behavior. No action was taken against the leopard. Werner's footage was shared with safari guide training programs as a tragic example of how quickly leopard encounters can escalate. However, the most graphic portions showing the actual fatal bite and Daniel's final moments were edited out before any training use. Park officials and Daniel's employer agreed that while the footage had educational value, the full unedited version was too disturbing and would serve no additional purpose beyond what edited segments could provide. But Daniel's fatal encounter with a feeding leopard wasn't the only time a camera captured the moment someone crossed an invisible line in the animal kingdom. In Namibia's Etosha National Park, a conservation volunteer's documentation camera would record the terrifying speed of a black rhino protecting her newborn calf. It was April 3, 2018, and the Namibian sun was already climbing toward its midday peak over Etosha National Park. The air shimmered with heat across the open plains, where scattered acacia trees provided the only shade for miles. Temperatures were pushing toward 100 degrees, and the dry season had left the landscape parched and dusty. Sophie Laurent adjusted the camera mounted on her chest harness. At 26 years old, the conservation volunteer from Lyon, France, had spent the past 4 months working with a small wildlife trust in Etosha, documenting black rhino populations. Black rhinos were critically endangered, with fewer than 5,500 remaining in the wild. That morning, Sophie was working with Dr. Peter Van Rooyen and Malcolm Hughes, a wildlife photographer. Their target was a female black rhino nicknamed Kaya, Swahili for home, who had recently given birth to her second calf. Malcolm was filming with a professional-grade video camera. The team approached in a modified Land Rover, staying inside the vehicle as per strict park protocols. They parked a good distance from where Kaya and her calf were resting beneath an acacia tree. Malcolm's footage shows Kaya lying on her side, the calf nursing. After several minutes of observation, Kaya stood abruptly, her ears rotated forward, nostrils flaring. The calf scrambled to its feet. What happened next was unexpected. Sophie's door, which she had left slightly ajar for better air circulation, swung fully open. A strong gust of wind caught it, and the door banged against the vehicle's side panel with a sharp metallic clang. Kaya reacted instantly. She lowered her head, horn pointing forward, and charged toward the sound. Dr. Van Rooyen called out for Sophie to close the door and told their driver, Johannes Amukoshi, to drive. Johannes started the engine and began accelerating, but the Land Rover was slow to build speed on the soft sand. Black rhinos are among the most dangerous animals in Africa, capable of weighing up to 3,000 pounds. Despite their massive bulk, they can run at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour, faster than most humans can sprint. Their horn can gore and kill with devastating efficiency. When protecting their young, black rhino mothers become living weapons. Though their eyesight is poor, they charge aggressively toward any perceived threat, using sound and movement to guide them. Sophie lunged for her door, trying to pull it shut, but the wind resistance made it difficult. The door swung partially closed, then banged open again. Sophie was leaning out, both hands gripping the door handle. Kaya reached the vehicle in seconds. Her horn struck the open door with tremendous force, tearing it partially free. Sophie, still gripping the handle, was pulled halfway out of the moving vehicle. Malcolm's camera shows Sophie dangling from the Land Rover's side. Dr. Van Rooyen grabbed her arms, trying to pull her back in. Johannes accelerated harder, the vehicle bouncing violently. The damaged door continued to bang and swing, creating more noise and movement. Kaya charged again at the moving vehicle, her massive bulk slamming into the side. The impact caught Sophie's exposed body, and the force knocked her completely free. She hit the ground hard. Kaya stood her ground nearby, snorting aggressively, her calf safely positioned behind her. The rhino's behavior was textbook maternal defense. She made no attempt to pursue the vehicle further, instead positioning herself between her calf and the perceived danger. Dr. Van Rooyen called out from the vehicle as he watched Sophie's motionless form on the ground, knowing they couldn't approach while Kaya remained in defensive posture. Malcolm's camera captured the moment as Johannes slammed on the brakes. Dr. Van Rooyen reached for the emergency radio. Even from the vehicle, the severity of Sophie's injuries was apparent. The team was forced to wait, unable to provide any medical assistance while the protective mother rhino stood guard. Kaya remained in the area for several minutes, preventing any approach. Only when satisfied did she slowly back away, guiding her calf toward the acacia tree. Johannes carefully maneuvered closer. Dr. Van Rooyen and Malcolm rushed to Sophie's side. She was unconscious, barely breathing, with massive trauma to her torso. Blood pooled rapidly beneath her. Dr. Van Rooyen applied pressure and attempted CPR, but the internal damage was too severe. Sophie died at the scene before the medical helicopter could arrive. The cause of death was massive internal trauma and hemorrhaging. Etosha National Park officials reviewed Malcolm's footage. Their report concluded that the door malfunction created an unpredictable situation that triggered Kaya's protective instincts. The charge was classified as defensive maternal behavior. No action was taken against Kaya. Park protocols were updated to require all vehicle doors to be secured with safety straps during rhino observations. The footage from both Malcolm's camera and Sophie's chest-mounted camera was retained by Namibian wildlife authorities for their official investigation. After the investigation concluded, the footage was sealed and never released publicly. Officials cited the ongoing need to protect the identities and privacy of conservation workers in the field, noting that releasing such graphic content could discourage future volunteers from participating in critical endangered species research. But Sophie's fatal encounter with a protective rhino mother wasn't the only time someone's camera captured the moment wildlife turned from subject to threat. In Tanzania's Selous Game Reserve, an adventure vlogger's multiple cameras would document his final moments as he leaned too close to water that wasn't as empty as it appeared. It was August 22nd, 2017, and the morning heat was already building along the Rufiji River in Tanzania's Selous Game Reserve. The air hung thick over the muddy riverbanks, where brown water moved sluggishly between dense vegetation. This section was remote, nearly 18 miles from the nearest ranger station, and known for its high concentration of Nile crocodiles. Andrew Peterson checked his camera equipment one final time. At 34 years old, the adventure travel vlogger from Melbourne, Australia, had built a YouTube channel called Extreme Encounters with over 400,000 subscribers. His tagline read, "Getting closer than anyone else dares." Andrew had arrived in Tanzania 3 days earlier, requesting access to the most dangerous crocodile spots. His local guide, Emmanuel Kitwana, had been reluctant, but the money Andrew offered was substantial. After making Andrew sign liability waivers, Emmanuel agreed. That morning, they positioned themselves on a muddy riverbank. Andrew had set up multiple cameras, a handheld GoPro, a tripod-mounted DSLR, and a waterproof camera on an extendable pole. The recovered footage shows Andrew crouched at the river's edge, explaining how Nile crocodiles could grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over a ton. Emmanuel could be heard off camera, asking Andrew to step back. Andrew waved him off. Within minutes, Andrew extended his GoPro on a selfie stick out over the water. His feet were now less than 3 feet from the water's edge, positioned on slippery mud. The riverbank sloped gently downward into shallow water. Nile crocodiles are among Africa's most dangerous predators, perfectly adapted for ambush hunting. They can remain motionless for hours, submerged with only their eyes and nostrils above water. When they attack, they explode from the water with shocking speed. Their bite force exceeds 3,700 pounds per square inch. They kill by drowning their victims, using a violent spinning motion called a death roll. What happened next occurred in seconds. A massive Nile crocodile, later estimated at 14 feet, lunged from the shallow water. The crocodile's jaws clamped onto Andrew's right leg just below the knee. The DSLR recorded everything. Andrew being dragged toward the water, Emmanuel sprinting toward him. The crocodile began pulling him toward deeper water. Emmanuel reached him within seconds and grabbed both arms, pulling with all his strength. The struggle lasted only moments. Blood streamed from Andrew's mangled leg, turning the water dark red. The crocodile was stronger. With a violent twist, it wrenched Andrew from Emmanuel's grip. The crocodile dragged him into deeper water. The DSLR footage shows the horrifying moment. The crocodile beginning its death roll, Andrew's body spinning violently. Emmanuel stood at the water's edge, but entering the water would mean certain death. Emmanuel continued calling out, even as the thrashing in the water became less violent. Emmanuel later told investigators that standing there, knowing there was absolutely nothing he could do without becoming a victim himself, was the hardest part. The thrashing continued for nearly half a minute before the water went still. Andrew had disappeared beneath the surface. Emmanuel immediately radioed for emergency assistance. He remained at the riverbank, watching the murky water for any sign of movement, though the outcome was already certain. A rescue team arrived within the hour. Divers equipped with protective gear entered the water later that afternoon. They recovered Andrew's body downstream, in deep water. Andrew had died from drowning and massive trauma. The crocodile's death roll had caused catastrophic injuries. Medical examiners determined he had likely lost consciousness quickly. Officials issued a statement emphasizing that Andrew had violated multiple safety protocols. No action was taken against the crocodile. trial. Emmanuel Kitwana was cleared of any wrongdoing after the video footage confirmed he had repeatedly warned Andrew. Emmanuel later stated that Andrew had wanted the perfect shot. The crocodile was just being a crocodile. Andrew was being foolish. The footage was used in wildlife safety training programs, but Andrew's YouTube channel and all associated social media accounts were permanently deleted by his family within weeks of his death. His family released a statement asking that the footage never be made public, stating that Andrew's reckless pursuit of viral content had cost him his life, and they did not want his death to inspire similar behavior in other content creators. Tanzanian authorities honored this request, and the footage remains restricted to professional safety training contexts only. But Andrew's fatal encounter wasn't the only time someone's camera captured the moment they stepped into a predator's territory. In South Africa's Kruger National Park, a safari tourist's phone would record the moment a seemingly calm situation with a hippo turned into a nightmare. It was November 12, 2019, and the early morning mist was just beginning to lift over the Sabi River in Kruger National Park. The water moved slowly through this section, creating shallow pools and muddy banks where hippos gathered during the day. The temperature was already climbing, promising another scorching day in the South African bush. Michael Chen and his girlfriend, Lisa Park, were on a guided walking safari, one of the park's premium experiences that allowed tourists to explore on foot with armed rangers. Their guide was Dumisani Mthembu, a ranger with 15 years of experience navigating Kruger's most dangerous areas. The group of 6 tourists had been walking for about an hour when they approached a bend in the river. Dumisani raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop. Through the morning haze, they could see a large hippo resting in the shallows about 50 yards away. Michael pulled out his phone and began recording. The hippo appeared calm, half submerged in the muddy water, seemingly unbothered by their presence. Dumisani explained in a low voice that they would give the hippo a wide berth, circling around through the bush to maintain a safe distance. Hippos were responsible for more human deaths in Africa than any other large animal, he reminded them. Despite their docile appearance, they were extremely territorial and could run at speeds up to 30 miles per hour on land. The group began moving in a wide arc, staying in single file behind Dumisani. Michael continued filming, capturing the hippo as it remained motionless in the water. Then Lisa stumbled. Her foot caught on a root and she fell forward, her backpack hitting the ground with a loud thud. The hippo's head snapped up, its ears rotated forward. For a moment, everything was still. Dumisani instructed the group to remain absolutely still. The hippo was already rising from the water. Its massive body emerged, revealing its true size: over 3,000 pounds of muscle and aggression. Hippos possess enormous jaws that can open to nearly 180 degrees, with canine teeth that can grow up to 20 inches long. Their bite force exceeds 1,800 pounds per square inch, powerful enough to bite a crocodile in half. The hippo began moving toward them, not running yet, but walking with purpose, water streaming off its gray hide. Dumisani positioned himself between the group and the approaching hippo, his rifle ready. The hippo's body language shifted suddenly. Its ears pinned back, and it broke into a full charge, its short legs moving with surprising speed, its mouth opening wide to display massive tusks. The charge was too fast. Dumisani raised his rifle but didn't have time for a clear shot before the hippo was on them. Dumisani fired into the ground directly in front of the charging animal and called out for the group to run for the trees, but the hippo was already committed. The group scattered. Michael's phone footage becomes shaky as he ran, but the audio captures the chaos. The sounds of people running, Dumisani calling out directions, and the thunderous sound of the hippo's charge. Lisa was still recovering from her fall, slower than the others. She ran in the wrong direction, toward open ground instead of the tree line. The hippo, targeting the closest moving figure, pursued her. Michael's camera swung around just in time to capture the moment. The hippo caught Lisa from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on her torso. The bite was catastrophic. The hippo's teeth penetrated deep, crushing ribs and vital organs. The hippo shook its head violently, the way a dog shakes a toy, then threw her aside. She landed several feet away, motionless. Michael called out Lisa's name as he stumbled, another tourist grabbing him before he could run toward her. The other members of the group had reached the tree line and were calling for Michael to keep moving to safety. Dumisani fired multiple shots into the air and at the ground near the hippo. The animal bellowed, turned, and charged back toward the river, crashing through the shallows before disappearing into deeper water. The ranger immediately positioned himself between the tourists and Lisa's body, scanning the area for any sign the hippo might return while simultaneously assessing whether there was any chance of survival. Dumisani ran to Lisa. The hippo's bite had caused massive trauma. she had died almost instantly. Dumasani radioed for emergency evacuation while keeping watch on the river. The hippo remained in the deeper water, visible only as a dark shape beneath the surface. A helicopter arrived within 40 minutes. Lisa's body was airlifted out along with the traumatized group. Officials reviewed Michael's footage. Their investigation determined that Lisa's fall had triggered the hippo's territorial response, and her subsequent movement in the wrong direction made her the most accessible target. The attack was classified as defensive behavior typical of hippos when they perceive a threat near their water source. The hippo was monitored by park rangers, but no action was taken to remove it from the area. Park officials used the incident to reinforce safety protocols for walking safaris, emphasizing the unpredictable nature of hippo encounters and the importance of maintaining distance from water sources. Michael's footage was submitted as evidence during the investigation, but Kruger National Park officials made the decision to keep it permanently sealed. The footage was deemed too graphic for any public or training purpose, and officials stated that existing educational materials on hippo behavior were sufficient. The decision was also made out of consideration for Lisa's family, who requested that no images or video of her final moments ever be released. South African authorities granted this request, and the footage remains locked in official archives, accessible only to investigators with specific authorization. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, check out this one.